We are back. It's the Joe Holka Show presented by Line Movement. It is week 9. We're going to talk through some of the top matchups on the entire slate, but the good news is it is a Wednesday and I can't do it alone, so I'm bringing in Rich Rebar, of course. You guys know him from the worksheet at sharpfootfootballanalysis.com. Rich Rebar at LordReebs on Twitter. How's it going, man? How was your week 8 overall?
Oh, man, my week 8 was terrible.
Same.
I got dragged in DFS. I got extra dragged in on the betting side, which we don't talk about in this show. But it was a loss of money the first week in November. We're going to go into week 9 and try to get some of it back.
Yeah, the crazy thing is, Reeves, is that like Derrick Henry didn't even bury me. I found other ways to lose. I somehow had all of the Patrick Mahomes, yet I didn't have any of the Dalvin Cook. I didn't have any of the Miami defense. I did have some Metcalf, of course, late, but man, like you needed like at least 2 of those pieces to have a shot at anything really last week. So that was kind of rough. Dalvin Cook's someone that I just never get right either. So not great overall. That's always worse when it's
wrong this year. That's the good thing.
Yeah, that's true.
Get it wrong.
That's true.
Every game.
Yeah. So I mean, I guess it's rough too when like the second half, like the betting side of it goes wrong. Either like if you can find something like to I guess hold on to. Like obviously we have the tilt space every Sunday night at 6:30 p.m. So Leone wins the Thunderdome. So I was just cheering for his teams the entire time. So he took that down for $50K, which was cool. I guess good for me for being able to cheer for one of my friends when I was just getting absolutely slaughtered after he gets a big win. So all right, man, let's jump right into it. So I think that this week we have to start with the Seattle and Buffalo game. It's a 55-point over-under. Seattle is a -2.5-point road favorite per blitzbet.eu. It is a fast-paced game overall, probably the fastest on the slate, with Seattle giving up a historical amount of plays to opposing offenses. So tell me about this game.
Yeah, I think everyone's going to start here. And most weeks we start with Seattle anyways, just with the style that they're playing, finally letting Russ cook, and then the amount of passing volume they're in giving up in return. It's gotten there every week. You know, last week it didn't look like we were going to get there for 3 quarters, and then Nick Mullins somehow pushed over our San Francisco pieces. They dragged him over the finish line, and Brandon Ayuk got there, and the Kendrick Bourne plays. They got there in the 4th quarter after Jimmy G was just squishing them for 3 quarters. But yeah, let's start the Buffalo side a little bit, because Buffalo was a team, if you remember, like Seattle out of the gates, they were just blitzcragging teams. And, you know, they've kind of gotten, fallen back, and Josh Allen's kind of come back to the pack. He started the season with 4 straight top 5 scoring weeks. He's been the QB 15 or lower every week since. He didn't even throw a touchdown pass in either of the past 2 games, but now you get the Seahawks team that's allowing, like we said, that a league high 47 pass attempts per game. And not only do we get inherent value when we play quarterbacks against Seattle, but they're hyper efficient, types of targets too, and pass attempts outside of, Jimmy G. They're 25th, Seattle is, in pass attempts, passing yards per allowed per pass attempt at 7.8, 25th in completion rate allowed to opposing quarterbacks. The one area where they do kind of survive is they actually are 8th in only touchdown rate allowed. Seattle, oddly enough, for as much as passing they've given up, they have a lot of rushing touchdown in every game this season. But 78% of the yards that they allowed are passing, which is the highest rate in the league. And this is a wide receiver game, period, on both sides. The Seattle Seahawks wide receivers lead the league in rate of catchable targets at 81%, and the Buffalo Bills wide receivers are second right behind them at 79.4% of their targets being catchable. It's a big wide receiver game on both sides. And on the Bills side, it easily just starts with Stephon Diggs. His opening 4 games, he had just 24% of team targets. I say only 24%, as that was the high number, and 34% of the team air yards. But since then, the past 4 weeks, Stephon Diggs has been a wrecking crew. 35% of the team targets, 42% of the team air yards. It's really just been him. Honestly, part of the problems with their offense could be that just too much is going through Stephon Diggs, and the ancillary pieces aren't helping out as much as they were the opening, 4 games of the season, where John Brown was hitting the opening weeks and Gabriel Davis was getting a touchdown, or Cole Beasley was, involved. But the wide receiver 1 spot against the Seattle Seahawks has just been the fantasy honeypot. I mean, they are allowing 24 PPR points per game to opposing wide receiver 1s. The average receiving line for wide receiver 1s against the Seattle Seahawks is 9 catches for 115 yards. So Stephon Diggs is walking right into that. You can get cute with the ancillary pieces here too if you feel in John Brown. He did return to the lineup and played. He ran a pass route on 96% of the team dropbacks last week, although he had just 2 targets. Cole Beasley's been kind of Cole Beasley, if you want to go there. But we're looking to pair up maybe Josh Allen and Stephon Diggs. And if we're going to run it back with a Seattle guy, I mean, I know that everyone will circle to it, but it's another one of these Locket weeks. Maybe because we're all on the Locket week, it won't happen, but the two that we've been on previously have happened. And when you look at any time that the Seattle Seahawks have faced a team with a big man-to-man corner in the New England Patriots and then the Arizona Cardinals, they've had Stephon Gilmore shadow him, and they had Patrick Peterson shadow him. Tyler Lockett has been kind of the guy. He had 7 catches for 67 yards and a touchdown against New England, and then obviously the 15 for 203 blackout game against Arizona where they just didn't even care about Drake Kirkpatrick getting slaughtered on the other side. I mean, great plan. You shut down DK Metcalf and then gave 200 yards to another receiver. I'm not sure if that was the plan, but Tre'Davious White's going to be on DK Metcalf. He runs 86% of his routes on the outside. That doesn't mean we have to avoid DK Metcalf. We saw like against Stephon Gilmore. He's big and fast enough to hit on anybody, but the signal here is that the plethora of targets are probably going to run through Tyler Lockett, and we've seen them kind of oscillate now. The first 3 games of the season, they each had 20% team target shares together in all 3 games, and now it's kind of been like an either-or game with those guys. And I think if we're going to play the either-or game, it's definitely the signal is through Tyler Lockett. And then I just don't know if Russ is ever going to slow down. I mean, this guy has a 10% touchdown rate right now, 10.2% touchdown rate. I don't know. Like we always say like, hey, Russ is a hyper efficient player, but like this is even for him is pretty outlandish. He's on pace for 59 touchdown passes. Don't know how long we can get that to hold up, but we'll keep riding the wave as long as we can. But obviously this is a game where everyone's going to start this week.
Yeah, Russell Wilson is leading the slate naturally at completion percent above expectation at 7.4. Pretty crazy number overall. One thing that's, I guess, interesting about this game, Josh Allen just 2 weeks ago was 7,900. Now he's 7K. So I think that's an interesting little discount we get in a fantastic matchup. Probably the best bounce back spot you could ever imagine. Nice to see Smokey just looks like he's healthy. I mean, I kind of want to be early on that situation. And this Lockett versus Metcalf thing, like this is already shaping up as a disaster for me. So because everyone's talking about Lockett, I'm naturally going to try and figure out a way to talk myself into playing Metcalf. Like it's not often you get a guy that just had 15 targets the week before and he's going to be the lowest owned piece in this game, probably at like the higher end ceiling level. So definitely interesting. Diggs, like you said, one of the best plays on the slate, leads the slate in weighted opportunity rating, top 6 in yards per route run. So I love that. We spent a little bit extra time on that game, obviously, because it is so strong. Let's move on to the second game on your list today, Reebs. And I think this one's also very interesting. Las Vegas Raiders at the LA Chargers, a 53-point over-under. The Raiders are a 1-point road dog per blitzbet.eu. Tell me about this game.
Yeah, we didn't get to see what the Raiders were going to do last week with, that game got kind of squished. I hope people came off of that game, on Sunday morning. We kind of joked last week about being boots in the ground, and I joked that I went outside and threw a football 26 yards if anyone wanted to gauge whether they wanted to play anyone in that game. But you look at the Raiders, so even through counting last week's game against the Browns, I mean, they are 6th in the league in EPA offensively. They've scored on a league high 55% of their drives, more than the Chiefs. More than the Saints. Any of those offenses, they've scored at the highest rate per drive in the NFL. And then on the flip side, they're allowing 3.1 points per drive defensively. That's the highest rate in the league. So we've got the cocktail here where they're playing efficient offense and they're giving up points in return. And since Justin Herbert's taken over, like the Chargers, they're another one of these teams, like they haven't played a normal game in like a month. All their games turn into like these weird games. You go back to that Bucs game, and from that point on, even when they played the Jaguars and they were 9-point favorites, like that game was weird and like was a high scoring game. And then last week you have the Drew Lock storm back, which was one of the games that buried me, by the way, from a betting stance.
Not great.
Which was gut wrenching. But so we've got like the Chargers playing in all these fun games. The Raiders have been getting there. Justin Herbert is tied with Russell Wilson for the most passing touchdowns on deep targets. So like he's kind of winging them all around. He's not throwing it into Hunter Henry, even though we all want him to, who's out there running around at 80% of the Chargers dropbacks, but he's seemingly the only Charger that can't get there for us any week. Herbert's got 20 or more fantasy points in every start, 5 of his 6 starts, I should say, not every start. And he's closed the last 4 games as a top 10 scorer with 3 passing touchdowns. And he is just pumping targets to Keenan Allen. I mean, Keenan Allen has double-digit targets in all of the full games he's played with Justin Herbert. And even in the one game he only played a quarter, he still had 10 PPR points on 12 snaps against the Saints because he caught that touchdown. We've seen Mike Williams. He's kind of like he's like Charger Marvin Jones is what I've kind of always referred to him as. Like you're going to get like these 1-catch 4-yard games. Then you get stuff like against the Saints where he has 2 touchdowns. So like last week, he's like a complete air yard tournament guy. He's like the guy you always chase. The Raiders side's a little trickier. But Henry Ruggs is trending upwards if you want to follow just his usage chart. Since he's returned, he's run a pass route on 63% of dropbacks, 78% of team dropbacks, and last week 90%. And he would have had a touchdown last week if I don't know if he forgot that in the NFL you need 2 feet down, because it should have been an easy touchdown for him. And then we always know we can play Darren Waller, who leads all NFL tight ends in targets per game, and then team target share at 27%. So this game too also can be pretty fun. We know we don't have any weather concerns with the Raiders this week.
That's positive. So maybe we won't see Josh Jacobs get like 33 carries again. That was also not good for me last week. So yeah, you mentioned those last 4 games for Herbert. I'm with you. Even over those last games, these Chargers games in general have averaged 64 total points over that time period. So another one that looks like it could shoot out, with you 100% on that. Want to make sure we have enough time for this last game. Detroit at Minnesota, 52-point over-under. The Lions are 4-point road dogs per blitzbet.eu. It is one of the slower paced games on the slate, so that would be a concern. Last week, the Lions ran only 22 first half plays, so I guess that is a concern. I would say one more concern for Stafford in particular. His yards per attempt definitely dips when Golladay is not there. It goes from 8.4 yards per attempt to 7.2 yards per attempt. Not to just completely trash on this game, because I like it a lot too. Tell us why you like it.
Yeah, I mean, you look at Minnesota, the games that they've played at home inside, that they've averaged 67 combined points per game. It's the second highest total in the league in terms of where stadiums are played. So all these games have been kind of shootouts when they've been played in Minnesota. They lost another cornerback last week at Cameron Dantzler, like the only team that can't afford to lose more corners. The Vikings seem to lose a guy every week. But this game is tricky. You kind of alluded to just from a pace stance too, and the Vikings always, if they can acquiesce into just leaning on Dalvin Cook like last week, where they only have to throw 14 pass attempts. That's not fun for us. Even if you had Dalvin Cook, it's fun. But if you got any other pieces, that makes it tough on the game, because, the Packers get reduced plays, then there's no passing volume for the Vikings guys themselves. And this receiver situation is also starting to get a little frustrating, like the Seattle one, where you really can't play both these guys. So from week 3 on, when Justin Jefferson was inserted as a starting perimeter wide receiver, Adam Thielen has caught 26 of 37 targets. He's got 430 air yards. Justin Jefferson, over that same span, has caught 26 of 34 targets, 433 air yards. Almost a direct overlap. Getting these guys right, and they never do it together. They have 100-yard game together. It's kind of an either-or situation when one of these guys does pop. Adam Thielen does kind of have a trump card. He has 9 end zone targets, and Justin Jefferson just has 1. That's why we've seen Thielen kind of save these games where he's had 29 yards or 14 yards, or he's been getting a touchdown to save those games. Justin Jefferson has not shown he has that spade yet in the offense. But Detroit is their 23rd in completion rate allowed on deep targets. They're 21st in completions allowed of 20 or more yards. They are bad against opposing wide receiver ones as well. They are allowing their 20th in yards per target to all wide receivers. So, I mean, it's a reason to want to play these guys, but it's kind of head scratching. It's hard to get these guys right. And it's not as telltale as it has been for the Seattle guys, where we've been on the right guys. We've been kind of guessing with these Vikings guys and hoping to be on the right side, or playing just a cheaper option. But now that Jefferson is almost as much as Adam Thielen on these sites, it's really tricky. And then obviously, no one has equity in the team's scoring production than Dalvin Cook. He's accounted for 48% of the Minnesota offensive touchdowns. You say, yeah, he just had 4. He's got a touchdown in every game this season, like we were joking about before that. Every game he's played, he's missed 6 quarters, and he's got 48% of the Vikings touchdowns. It's the most in the league. And he has accounted for 31% of the fantasy points, the non-passing points that the Vikings have. Only Alvin Kamara has accounted for a higher share too. So, I mean, you can always, if you're worried about pace, you just play Dalvin Cook. Yep. And then if not, you can get cute and run it back. You hit on the Stafford split, so we don't have to judge there. And then I just want to bring up, I only bring up Marvin Jones, but TJ Hawkinson has really started to come on here, after kind of a little lull. He's starting to get a lot of burn here. He had just 4 catches for 26 yards weeks 4 through 6, because they had a bye mix in. He's at 559-1, 765 last week. He had season high 10 targets and 24% of the team's targets last week. So while everyone may be looking that Marvin Jones gets the bump coming off the 2 touchdown game, and with Golladay being out, it might be Hawkinson is a guy that, just turns into the guy that gets more targets. And we already know he has high touchdown equity himself.
Yeah, that's really interesting. I wasn't quite sure the direction I wanted to go with some of these cheaper Detroit pass catchers. So Marvin Hall, Danny Amendola, both under 4K. Marvin Hall last week saw a crazy target share. He had 7 targets at his price point, but he's seen those deeper targets, which is nice. Amendola a little bit safer underneath. One of the guys that we haven't touched on yet in this game, I have some interest in Deandre Swift, which is crazy because I rarely play these guys that you can't, like, I guess, directly project for a ton of touches, but I'm kind of ready to buy back in. He's already had that one game where he goes off. Like, he's got the passing role definitely locked down, but he's seen the most carries inside the 5 this year in this offense. So I think that if there's a chance that down the stretch he takes over that AP role, there could be some value at Deandre Swift. We're going to need some value options in this game, I think, overall, because the top end is so strong. Dalvin Cook, you mentioned that the offense runs through him. One thing that I think is interesting and one thing that I'm trying to get a little bit better about is just targeting these offenses that they have, like, I guess, a propensity to run the ball in the red zone. So their adjusted red zone run percent, highest in the league, 63.64%. So that's part of the reason you go in there. You know that Dalvin Cook, if they get close to the goal line, he's going to run it in. There's a ton of value in that. Rich Rebar, everyone. Make sure you follow him on Twitter at LordReebs. Let the people know where they can find your work throughout the week.
Yep, sharpfootballanalysis.com, pre-snap motion podcast with my buddy Chad Scott, Sharp Angles podcast with Cleve TA and Dan Pizzuta, which is more betting real football based. 3:15 every Wednesday, Joe Holka Show. I hope you feel better, Joe, and get better here for next week.
Thanks, brother. We're working through it. Appreciate you. Talk to you soon.